What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben and welcome back to the bench, guys, for another episode of our Pearl Harbor group build and our PBY Catalina by Academy Minicraft in 1/72nd scale. Today we're going to go ahead and continue right where we left off from last time and focus on more of the internal detailing. Now, last episode, as you saw, we added in a lot of structural detailing there in the center section of the fuselage. On the bulkheads, scratch built some seats, all that good stuff. So it looks pretty nice, not necessarily accurate or 100% right on point, but I think it looks good enough for what we're doing. We still have to add the walkway in there. We have a couple more things, like there's some ammo boxes in there, maybe even a fire extinguisher. But for right now, that's good. We're going to move on to the front of the aircraft and focus on the cockpit. We're not really going to do much with that bubble turret up front there. We'll leave that alone for now. We just want to go ahead and focus on the cockpit because that is the most logical area to now focus on. That being said, there is a large section on the center of the Catalina that has a ton of really cool devices and equipment and all that, but you're not going to see it, so I'm not going to do much with that. We're just going to focus today on that cockpit. Now, to do that, we're going to have to take a look at the parts because, like most things in this kit for the internals, there are basically no details whatsoever on any of these parts. That's got to change because you're going to be able to see a little bit of that when you look down through the canopy. Granted, not a lot. So I think now if we can add a bit more to go ahead and spice up the interior, I think it'll look better for it. Let's go ahead and just start gathering up the parts here and check my references. And let me go ahead and do a quick mock-up and show you guys what we're working with here as opposed to what we have for our references. Now, taking a look at my references here, guys, as you can see, I've done a quick mock-up of the 1/72nd scale PBY, and we have my references for a scratch-built 1/48 scale. And as you can see, the cockpit is very detailed, and the one in the kit here is not. There's hardly any detail in here whatsoever, so we're going to have to go ahead and change that. Now, since you can look down through the canopy and see some of the detailing here on this back bulkhead, that's where I want to go ahead and focus. And first off, I want to go ahead and add in some detailing on the door. Now, there's a door between different compartments here, so that needs to be detailed up quite a bit, and as well as a bulkhead right behind the pilot seat, that has to be detailed as well. So lots of little pieces of styrene cut into strips and glued down in some form of approximate structural layout. Also, it really bugs me. There's this giant gaping hole right between the pilot and the co-pilot. I know that's a walkway to the front of the aircraft. So I want to go ahead and box that in with some styrene, and I have to make it just the right depth so that we don't cut the door in half, right? So I need to go ahead and figure that out. But I think we are ready to go ahead and jump in here, guys. Let's grab our tools, grab that styrene, jump into that time lapse, and let's go ahead and see what we can do to add some interest to this front section of the cockpit. Alright everybody, we are back and I have decided to go ahead and switch over to the cockpit chairs. I've been looking at those and they're not really the greatest, so I've decided to do a little bit of work. What I've done so far is I've made a little bit of a pedestal, just basically folding 4 pieces of styrene together and gluing them all down. That way I can go ahead and just cut a little square and I can use that to elevate the seats just a little bit above the cockpit floor. I'm also going to go ahead and scratch build some of the armor plating that sits behind the seat. Nothing too fancy here, just a piece of styrene sanded down and kind of curved so that it looks more like what I see in the pictures. Once I get that all kind of set up, I can use that as a template and I can reproduce another one. So I'll have 2, one for each chair. This is actually something that I think is going to add a lot of depth and realism to the cockpit itself. And that's what I'm going for here. Now we'll glue it down to the back of the chair and we'll go ahead and do a little bit more fine tuning just to make sure that we have everything rounded off and that it matches on both right and left side. And I think so far this looks pretty good. Now once we have the armor plating glued down to the back of the chair, we can come in and we can sand it down and taper it just to make sure that everything looks even on the right and the left side. This again is just going to add a little bit of height and a little bit of interest to the chair itself, and it'll give me more elevation, which is what I'm looking for. The seats here in the kit are very small and I think they're undersized, and they originally just mount directly to the floor of the cockpit. With the pedestal that I made and with the armor plating glued into the back, it's going to give it some more depth and lengthen the seat quite a bit. So I think that's what I'm going for. Now we're going to go ahead and attach the seats down to the cockpit floor. I'm going to glue on my little square pedestal there that I made from 4 sheets of styrene glued together. And we're going to go ahead and just get that tacked in place. This is looking pretty cool, I gotta say. Now that we have both of our seats glued into place, you can kind of get a feel for how the cockpit is looking. I added in a couple of extra scratch built details here and there, and this should hopefully help to kind of raise that detail level just a little bit. Then we'll drop it into place here in the front of the nose. Got the structural detail in the back of the bulkhead as well as on the door, and we framed in that walkway. So it's actually, I think, an improvement over what was. Let's go ahead and dry fit this here in the front of the nose, and then we'll go ahead and sandwich it with the other side of the fuselage, making sure this is about where it would be if we glued everything together. So you can see down inside, you can notice that there is that floor there on that walkway. We've got the chairs all glued in. We can go ahead and just test fit the canopy right on top of that, and you will be able to see quite a bit of the detail through those windows. But again, it's not going to be as prominent as the glazings in the mid fuselage. You can see a little bit here behind the bulkhead as well, so I might want to add in something to kind of obscure just emptiness in there. But I think the front of the cockpit looks pretty good, and I'm happy with it. But that about wraps it up for today, guys. I think the cockpit is looking pretty good. I'm enjoying where this is moving, and of course, next episode we got to come on back and maybe we can go ahead and do a bit more scratch building there for that turret. Otherwise, we can just go ahead and start painting, priming, getting all that stuff done and getting this thing all buttoned up. But until then, you know the drill. Go out there and get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool, and we'll see you back here on episode number 4 for the Pearl Harbor group build and our PBY Catalina. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you soon.